Hi, and welcome to my lesson about jQuery. So in the previous lesson, we went over HTML. So I hope that you guys watched that because it's kind of a prerequisite to this. So let's begin. Um, Find the jQuery slide. Okay, here we go. So first, what is JavaScript? So JavaScript is a scripting programming language um, that is used on the client side, which is the user's browser. And JavaScript can also be used by the server side utilizing Node.js. But for what we're going to use it for, we're going to use it for the on the client side. Um, so, for instance, JavaScript, we're going to use JavaScript for programming and doing some user interaction stuff on the front end, on the client side, on the browser, and then we're going to use C# and web forms and stuff like that for the back end on the server side. So yeah. With JavaScript, you can create functions that manipulate the page that the user is viewing. So you can create functions just like how you can in any other language, and you can manipulate the web page. And the computing is done on the client side. On the user's computer rather than on the server, which allows for faster processing of the data, and it saves the server some work. So if there's something that doesn't have to be done on the server, um, you could most likely move that over to the client side. Anything that's done on the front end, on the client side using JavaScript, doesn't affect anything on the server unless that data is posted back. But hopefully the server will do some validation on the data that's posted back. And it's used for creating interactive elements, like I said, on the page, so that the page isn't static. It essentially just adds like characteristics to it. Um, it just allows the user to interact with it a lot better. Um, and it's used for adding quick validation of elements on the front end before passing that data to the server. And then, like I actually mentioned before, that the server will then typically revalidate that data. Um, so, for instance, let's say that a password you need it to be at least 8 characters long. You would do that check first on the front end, and then you would, if it was 7 characters or 5 characters long, you would show the user an immediate notification telling them, hey, your password isn't long enough, rather than not doing that validation at all and just sending that password, that uh, 5 character length password over to the server, and then the server will have to validate that, and then it would say, okay, no, this is not long enough, and it'll return back to the client side and tell the client that this isn't long enough. So that whole round trip just takes a long time. Whereas if you had just done the check from the beginning on the front end, um, you would have saved the user time, and it would have been a faster interaction and just a better user experience in general. Um, but keep in mind, you still want to do that validation on the back end. Um, and then I posted a link here to the jQuery documentation if you guys are interested to look at it. And then what is jQuery? So jQuery is a powerful JavaScript library, and it makes manipulation of a web page much easier to use than using plain JavaScript. It's useful for document traversal, manipulation, event handling, animation, and making AJAX calls, which we will go over in a later video. And it takes something that would typically take a lot of lines of code to write in JavaScript, and where you can write something in a single line using jQuery. So jQuery uses selectors, so you can select elements using this type of syntax. So first you have the $ here, as you can see, and then you have the parentheses, and then you have the hash sign, the pound sign. What this means is that you're able to select an element ID with this. And then keep this in mind for when we're learning styling like CSS, because this is going to be very similar to that. So with the pound sign, you're able to select an element's ID, and I'll demonstrate this later. And ID, like I stated in my HTML overview video, is that it's unique. So you could specify here that this unique element, and then you could do you can code this element to do certain things. If you don't specify a pound sign or a period before the element name or whatever the name of something that you're trying to manipulate, what that's going to do is that's going to so you select the tag. So let's say that you have a paragraph tag, and instead of element tag here, we had P for the paragraph tag. This would select all of the paragraph tags within your document, within your web page. Now, for the next one, notice that there's a period here. This period is selects the class. So when you have, so inside of a tag, you could specify a class style that you want for that element. So let's say you give it a tag of I don't know, red, and the code for the class red is make the font red and make it bold. So what you can do here is, instead of element class, if you do dot red, the class name that I just created, it would select all the elements that have the class of red. So I'll demonstrate this in a video as well. And then we have the element, the hash element ID, and then comma element tag. What this does is it selects multiple. So if you want to, let's say, add an event, like when you click on a button that is named element ID, that has the ID element ID, and and if you click on a paragraph, then you want it to do the same thing for both of them, you would specify that with a comma in between, separating all the different things. And what that's going to do, as I said, it's going to execute the same code for these two selectors. Some useful things to know. So jQuery has some cool functions and stuff that we'll go over. So you're able to hide and show elements. And I believe that these take parameters, so you can specify how long you want it to show, and like how long you want it to take it to for it to hide, kind of like a fade almost. And then you could do text. So dot text. So this will set or get the text of an element. HTML can set or get the HTML of the entire element, so including like the tag and everything. And val is used for input elements to get or set the value of those inputs. And here's an example of a click event. So, for instance, for this element with the ID of ID, because of the pound sign, and then the ID of the element is ID. So whenever they click on it, according to this function, it will create an alert box for the user that says clicked. Here's another example where you can add a class. So let's say that instead of here an alert clicked, you have add class and then this class. You could always, depending on if you click it, like you can make it so that it toggles between different colors, right? So that it toggles between being red and being so that this element, this ID element, toggles between being red and being blue or whatever. So there's a lot of things that you can do within event handlers, and with add class and remove class. You're actually able to do a lot of like um, uh, interactions with a user to let them know. For instance, you could set a border for a text box if they didn't fill it out correctly. So you could set a red border for that. And once they fill it out correctly, you remove the class. And if it's not correct, then you add a class. Let's say invalid, which will have something like a red border style to it. So event handlers. So event handlers, they have to occur after the document has been loaded, and because the elements have to exist on the page, so that jQuery can attach to an event listener to it. So here I have an example of something that's good versus something that's bad. So you'll notice that these are very similar, minus the fact that here in the script tag, I have a function uh, here, whereas here I don't. So what this means, it's a shorthand code for when the document loads. So this $ parentheses function, parentheses and parentheses, bracket, and then you got to close it off over here, just tells the code that, hey, when the document loads, set this event handler. Now notice how I have .click here. So you can do, like I mentioned here, on and then click, and then here you can type like mouse over or mouse down, or there's a lot of events that you can do, or you could be very specific and do .click if that's allowed. You would have to look at the documentation to see what kind of events you can do this with like that. But anyway, here you can see that with when my button, when the element with the ID, and I know it's the ID because of the pound sign, the hash sign right there, called my button, whenever that's clicked, it's going to change the value of my button, which is an input, to I'm changed. So right now, if we look at the code here, you can see that the value is click me of this my button. And you can see that the ID of this input type of button, the ID of it is my button. So here, this is the same element that we're referencing here. And here, we're setting the value. So this is an example of something that you can do with jQuery. So let's go ahead and start just diving into the code and showing you guys how to use this. All right, so we're back here with the example that we were kind of doing earlier in the HTML overview. So let's go over some stuff that we learned from the PowerPoint slide presentation. So you'll remember that when that in order to do anything with jQuery, you need to have script tags. So if you remember back from the PowerPoint presentation, you would have seen that I had script tag here in the head. Now, scripts can be in the head or they can be in the body. It doesn't matter. I like to put them in the head, so that's where this will go. So script is telling it that, hey, I have some JavaScript that I want to run, and here it is. So we'll go ahead and add these script tags. Make sure that you add the starting one and then the ending one with a slash. But before we do anything with jQuery, we need to get the jQuery library. So we'll go here and then we'll just search jQuery CDN, and you'll see that this came up. So code.jquery.com. You'll see a bunch of options here. So you can just get the uncompressed jQuery 3.x version. And this will pop up. So all you have to do is click this to copy it to your clipboard, and it's copied. So close out of this, minimize that. And then right underneath your title, before your script tag, not after, you have to call it before, so that the script, anything in here can actually utilize this, because the order does matter. Just paste it. So here you'll see that we're importing this jQuery library over into our page. So now we've successfully added the library. So now we can do some stuff. So again, remember when I said that you have to have the function in here. And again, what this is doing is it's telling JavaScript that, hey, run this only when the document loads. What this means is when the document is ready, go ahead and run this code. So we'll just do this, and we'll do like alert and then hello world. And let's run this. And you'll see that when the document loaded, when I opened it and the document loaded, we got a hello world. So let's minimize that. And now we can do some more stuff. So let's see. So let's do an on-click event. So whenever I click, let's add a button here at the top. Input type button. Let's give it an ID of my button value. Change paragraph text. So let's make it so that whenever we click this button, the text for anything that has a paragraph in it changes. So the way that we do that would be by doing the $sign. The $sign signifies jQuery. And then we will do the pound for, actually we would do P, because we're just doing the tag. So anything with the tag of P, or no, the event is going to happen on the, yes, it's going to happen on the button. So hash my button. And on the click event, so on the click event, when the My button is clicked, I want all the tags, all the elements with p tags. I want their text to be tag changed. So let's open up our page here and just refresh it. So we see the little button here, and there's a lot of paragraphs here that we have set. We have this on a paragraph, a whole bunch of paragraphs here. So let's just see what happens when we click. You see that this changed to tag changed, tag changed, tag changed. And if we right click and we inspect, you'll see that the P is still there, but everything within the P that was within the P has changed. So let's reload the page, set it back to how it was. Let's right click and see what happens. So when that was clicked, that changed everything from within here into whatever we had set it to say, that text. So now what we can do, so yeah, tag change. So now what we can do is when, let's say we don't want all of the P's altered. So let's do class change. I don't know. So let's say that we want, or bolded actually would probably be better. So these two are bolded because of the B tag and the strong tag, right? And so let's say that we want to hide only the bolded ones, but not any of the other ones, like the italicized ones. So what we would do here is we would say that any element, any tag with a P, any element with a P tag, and that has a class of, what was it, bolded? And that has a class of bolded, these are the ones that I want to change the text to tag change. And actually, let's take it a step further. Let's test out hide. So whenever I click on the My button, I want any element with a tag of P and that has a class of bolded to hide. So let's go ahead and save that. Let's open up our page. Let's refresh. Okay, so right now these two should change or hide. So let's click, and you can see that they were hidden. And then you can do the same thing with .show. This would show them back, so you can add another button here. Let's do that. Input type button ID equals show elements value. Click me to show the elements. Let's copy this code. Let's change this back to hide. Let's keep this at show. And then keep in mind that you can also, you could have done this. And what this is doing is it's not caring about the any P tags. It's only looking for bolded. So like this, you could do. Actually, this is a bad example because it's inside of a P tag. So you could do something like this UL. So class bolded. Now the name doesn't matter. It's just a name that for the class that I made. It can be anything. So um, so here what will happen is all of the elements with a class bolded will hide. So for instance, this unordered list will hide, and these two p tags will hide because they all contain the class bolded. And then when we click the show button, only the elements with a p tag with the class bolded will show. So this will stay hidden because this is a UL tag. It's not a p tag. Whereas these are p tags and they have bolded, and so these will show. So let's go ahead, save this, open up our window, refresh. Okay, so change paragraph text. We'll click this. And what was supposed to happen? So bolded was supposed to hide. So this hid. So these should hide. So this is saying anything with a bolded class should hide. Oh, we need to change this, I think. There we go. Yep. Okay. So the problem was that I copied and pasted this and I didn't change the elements. So this button is when to hide, right? And this hide button is to show the elements. So anyway, so this button will hide the elements. So as we said, this unordered list has a bolded, and these have bolded classes on them. So all these should hide. And then when we click, only the ones with a p tag should show. Um, and so the unordered list won't show. And then you can have another button. Uh, uh, remove, let's just call it remove bolded class. We'll remove bolded class from p tags. So now we'll create a button that will remove the bolded class from any p tags. So let's go ahead and let's not make this mistake again. So remove bolded class. So when we click this button with this ID, now keep in mind you can make it so that when you click anything with a bolded class to do this, you can do that. Or anytime that you click on any input to show. So what this will do is whenever you click an input, like any button or any of these like text boxes, for instance, it will trigger this code. But we want to do it specifically for this element, for this button. So whenever you click this button, we want to remove remove class, and we want to remove bolded. So what this is going to do is it's going to look at all the paragraphs and remove the class bolded if they have that in there, whenever this removed bolded class is clicked. So let's just see. Let's refresh the page and see what happens. So right now, the paragraph tags that contain bolded, the class bolded, are this and this. These two right here. So what should happen is we click this button, it'll remove the bolded class from these. You won't be able to see anything, but it will remove it behind the scenes. And then when we click hide elements is set to hide any element that has bolded in it. So you'll see that if we click this and then this, only the unordered list will hide. Why? Because by clicking this button, it removes the bolded class from these p tags. So let's go ahead and do that. So we will remove the bolded class, and then we will hide. And you'll see that that's what happened. And you can do the same thing with like add class as well. And there's a lot of other useful functionalities that you can do with this, but these are some of the biggest ones that you'll be utilizing throughout the course and by using jQuery in general. So hope this helps.